Welcome back to the arcade. Today, once again, we're going to be revisiting our G08 monitor, which is in a converted Asteroids, which was converted to Star Trek. And I have the Vector Labs Sega G80 multi-game in it. Well, just around a year ago, maybe a little bit over a year ago, I pulled the monitor out because I had never done anything to it. It was working, but I went ahead and put a cap kit in it, and you can see it's a 5-video series. This will probably be video number 6. I'll just add it to it because I ever since I rebuilt the monitor, and actually before I rebuilt the monitor, it had this problem. Every now and then when you turn the game on, you would get no picture. And I always blamed it on the XY boards, because usually I would go down here to the card cage, and the XY boards are these two boards that are connected with this ribbon cable, and I would pull those boards out and reseat them, and it would seem like the monitor would come up and start working. So I kind of always blamed a bad edge card connection or whatever, the reason why I wasn't getting the monitor come on all the time. But I'm pretty sure now I'm thinking that the problem is in the monitor itself, and more specifically in the high voltage unit right here. Either it's not properly adjusted or something else is wrong. Now, when I rebuilt the monitor, I didn't, because I thought it was working and didn't have any problems with it. I didn't bother changing the transistor on the bottom here, or I don't believe I even took voltage readings to check for the 100 volt. It's got a 100 volt regulator on it. But anyway, the other night I came out here and turned it on, and I couldn't get a picture. So I got looking, and I couldn't see any net glow. So usually when you don't have net glow, that means you don't have high voltage. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and turn this on. I have it set up. I have a mirror over here in the corner where I can get a look at the picture here. So let's go ahead and turn it on. And you can hear the music powering up. The game will play blind. However, I'm getting no picture. Now, usually you can hear deflection chatter, but because these fan, the fan in the monitor and the fan down here are so loud, I can't really tell if I got deflection chatter or not. And if you don't have high voltage, I'm not sure if you'd have deflection chatter anyway. I believe you can, but I don't know for sure. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to take my high voltage probe, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to check and find out if I got high voltage. Okay, well, I have my high voltage probe here, and I have my ground hooked up to the chassis. So now we're going to go in here and see if we can't put this under the anode cap and test the high voltage. Let's see if I can get it in here. Okay. I should be on it right now. And I don't know if you can see that, but we're getting no high voltage. So my theory is correct. I'm probably in high voltage shutdown. Okay, so let me cut this off and let's talk about that a second here. High voltage shutdown. What could cause it? Well, first thing I need to check is the game board sending the proper signals to the deflection board? Because if the game board's not sending the proper signals, I guess that could cause a high voltage shutdown. So next thing I'm going to try is I'm going to take, here's the harness right here, which feeds the signal into the BXXYR board, which is Bill's board, which flips the XY signals when you're playing tax scan, so that tax scan will be in the vertical mode. I have a video for that too, so if you want to check into that. If you have one of these games and don't have Bill's BXXYR boards, you need to look into it and get one. Normally this plugs into the clamp board. That's what this blue board here is. Sometimes these are a sort of a light brownish color, but this particular one is blue in color, but they're the same boards. And usually it plugs into here and then comes out of the board and goes down and plugs into the monitor. So first I'm just going to go ahead, because it's easier, I'm going to take this connection loose right here, and we're going to find out which two wires in this plug here are for the XY, and then I'm going to hook it up to a scope and find out if we're getting a video signal from the boards. Well, the first thing I needed to find out was, how do you hook a scope up to the XY signals coming off of an XY game, like the Sega G08 system here. And going through YouTube and searching the internet, there's really not a whole lot of information out there about how you actually hook one up. And I'm not too familiar with an oscilloscope. I've had this for quite a few years. I've used it a few times. My main use I bought this for, that I used it for, I used to have a test bench set up with CB radio equipment, and all I really used this for was a modulation scope to set the modulation on the CB radio so that you're not over modulating, so you get a nice modulation signal using the B&K test equipment for CB service repair, which I still have. I'm not into that right now. But anyway, but this does have what you need is a scope, and this is 35 megahertz, so this should work. Usually they're around 40 megahertz scopes or whatever, but you know, I'd say you'd need at least a 40 megahertz to do anything with arcade repair, but like I say, I'm not an expert. But you do want one that has an XY mode, and it has to have two channels, because you have to have an X channel and a Y channel, and you have to be able to combine those in the XY mode to display the XY signal from the game. So you have to have two probes, which I have here. One set up on channel A and the other one set up on channel B. And these are just standard probes. You have your input here, and then you have a ground on each one. And that's basically it. Now the game board, this is the connector right here that comes from the game board. And it has, and I looked these up to see what the pinouts are. You have two wires here, a green and a yellow. That is your X and your Y. I believe the green is X and the yellow is Y. Then next to it you have your ground wires, and that's your ground for the video signal. And then you have it looks like brown, orange, and red, but they're supposed to be, that's your actual your signals for your color, for your red, green, and blue. Now why they use these colors, I don't know. I guess that's the colors that came in this wire that they used. But they're basically your red, green, and blue. So all we're concerned with is the X and Y pair and the ground. Now, we have to be able to hook this up to this. So without cutting into the wires or anything, I'm just going to take this connector here, and just going to plug it into the plug. Now, this is where you got to be very careful. Now, you can make up a special harness. I could solder some wires on here and fix it up so that wouldn't be any danger of shorting anything, but I'm going to be real careful about it. I'm going to just take my probe here, and I'm going to, first I got to find out, yeah, I color coded these. I put the green tag on here so I know this goes to the green wire. And if you get it mixed up, the only thing that'll happen will be the picture will be rotated sideways. So in theory anyway. Alright, so now I'll hook the other one up. And now I'm going to hook a ground up to the ground here. And I believe I can get by with just hooking one of the grounds up. We'll see. Okay, so now we're hooked up. I have a X and Y signal hooked into each one of the probes, and I got a ground hooked to it. So now all I have to do is turn the scope on. Turn the game on. And as soon as it warms up here, cut this light off. Be very careful, make sure you don't short any of these out. And there you have it. So that's just showing you how to hook it up to a XY scope. You have to make sure you got your mode in XY, and of course you're going to have to adjust these two knobs for the channels, because so you can squinch it up or go out. So you have to actually turn these down. You can actually make it any size you want. So you just have to adjust it to the screen. And let's see. Move it over a little bit. Have a flaky control here. Okay, there we go. So that's basically all it is to it. I just thought I should demonstrate how to hook that up, because there's not a whole lot of information on the internet about how to do this. So okay, well, I have the scope hooked up to the game output, so let's turn the game on and see what happens. Okay, this is kind of an old scope, so I have a flaky control here. Need to spray it with some deoxide, I guess. Okay, well, that'll work. Okay, well, basically that's telling us right there that the game is working. This is just a B&K 35 megahertz scope, but it does have XY capability. But you're still going to get the dots are connected with the lines, because this doesn't have, well, there's just no way of hooking it up so that it will display it like the vector monitor. Of course, the Sega games don't have the Z circuit anyway, but anyway, that's doing what I wanted it to do. At least we know that the game boards are working, and it is outputting a signal. So therefore, our problem has to be in the monitor itself. And so next step, we're going to have to pull the monitor out because it's just too hard to work on inside the game. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the monitor out and put it back on the bench, and then we'll take a closer look at it. Alright, now I got the unit here sitting on the bench. We got it out to monitor. The reason I had to do the fast forward thing with the music is because my wireless mic, I had stuck it in my back pocket because it's got a silly belt clip here that doesn't work real good. And when I sit down on it, it pushed the button and changed the channels. So all I recorded with the video was static. So lesson learned, do not put your mic transmitter in your pocket or anywhere where these buttons can be pushed. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to put some kind of little shield on here to cover the buttons so you can't change the channels on them. But other than that, it seems to work pretty good. Okay, now back to what we're trying to do here. Looking at this kind of close up here, let me turn this other light on. It doesn't look like any of the pins are loose. Visual inspection anyway. But the ground pins right here is two pins. Both of them are tied together, and it has this ground wire that goes over to the 100-volt regulator, and that's the ground right there. That had a kind of a big blob of solder on it when I retouched it up last year, and I should have went ahead and sucked it down and cleaned it up and redone all these pins a little better, but it didn't look that bad, so I figured I could get by with just reflowing some new solder on it. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get our desoldering station out, and I'm going to go ahead and just unsolder this pin header right here, and I'm going to go ahead and replace it with the square type pins. Alright, well, I'm all set up, and this is the header that I'm going to replace it with. These are the standard 156 square pin headers, and it should replace it just fine. And this is what I was trying to think of right here. The .156 Trifurcon pins. They're the ones that actually, when they're in the housing and you slide them on, it makes contact with 3 of the 4 sides instead of just right on the edge of this round connection on the old pins. So that's what the plan is. So let's go ahead and start first. I'm going to remove these 2 wires. I've already took a picture so I know which pin the wires go on. Anytime you're doing anything like this, you need to document what you're doing so you know how to put it back. So first I'm going to go ahead and take the ground wire off, and then this white wire here is the input voltage that goes to the 100-volt regulator. Okay, so get these 2 wires out the way. And first thing I'm going to do, I'm suspecting that the problem was right here with the ground pins, because it looks like it's got a little burning, charring there, where when I wiggled it and the high voltage came back on, I could see, or I could hear sizzling, like the connection still wasn't a good connection and it was arcing or whatever. And that's showing signs that maybe it's been arcing there. So I'm going to go ahead and take these off first and see what it looks like. And actually traces aren't bad. Nothing wrong with the traces. So let's go ahead and just take the rest of them off. All right. They're all wiggling and appear loose. And there we go. And all the pins are coated with solder pretty good. They don't appear like any of them have been arcing. So it's possible that the problem wasn't in this connector here. It might be the plug that plugged into the socket. So we'll have to look at that after we've replaced this. So first I'm going to go ahead and clean this up right here. Let's see. And I believe right here I should have, where is it at? Okay, I got to go find it. Be right back. Okay, I found what I was looking for, my fiberglass scratch pin. So I'm just going to take this and we're just going to clean these traces up here. And that's got a lot of flux on it there, so let me see if I can get my flux cleaner and clean this off here. Okay, well, I've been using this with great success. I use this in my pinball MPU on my baby Pac-Man. You get this at the auto parts stores, a lot cheaper than getting flux remover, but this is safe for plastics and electronic equipment, and it's supposed to also clean flux. So I'm just going to squirt a little bit on here. And a little bit on a Q-tip here. Let's see if we can get some of this off. This might not be flux. It might actually be burnt. Where the high voltage maybe it's been arcing. I don't know if it's high voltage on that plug or not. I wouldn't think so. I mean, I think, what does it say? The highest voltage going to this is what, 400 volts, I think maybe. But this is the ground for the whole unit. So who knows? Alright, well that's not really doing much. So let me go at it with this fiberglass pen a little more. I have to get something a little more aggressive. A little bit of sandpaper. Let's see if we can shine this up a little bit. Of course, I don't want to take the copper traces off, but I want to be able to, for the solder to stick to it good. Also want to make sure I don't have any broken traces going to the pins. And none of them look broken. So, alright, well that shined up pretty good. So I think I'm going to be good with that. Now, make sure there's no traces on the bottom side. And it's not. No traces on the bottom side. And I'm going to have to pull one of those pins out in order to get another one back in it. So let me go ahead and do that, and I'll set up and get ready to solder in the new header pin. Okay, well I went ahead and I just grabbed onto one of the pins, the pin that I need to remove with the pliers, and just pulled it right out. So I now have the setup to put it in. So let's go ahead and put it in. And it's a nice tight fit, and I like that. Alright, we'll go ahead and get a little bit of our liquid flux here. And just put a little bit of liquid flux on here. Alright, now we'll go ahead and solder the pins. And the solder's flowing nice. I'm going to put a little extra amount on this 2 ground pins here. Because I also have a wire to solder on there. Okay, take a quick look here and see what it looks like. It looks good to me. Okay, now just have to put these wires back on. So let me take a look at my picture I took. Pretty sure the black one goes on that double pin, but that's what I took pictures for. Yes, the black wire goes on the double pins, and the white wire goes on this one here next to the blank space. Okay. So, let me see what these look like. They look pretty good, but let me even the solder out on it a little bit. Okay. White one goes on this one right here. Add a little extra solder. Let's see how do I want this to go. I guess they had it sort of like this. Okay. Put a little fresh solder on this other wire here on the ground. And that one we should be able to just put right along this bottom clump. Okay, well that looks like it'll do it. So we're all done for this, and take a quick look at those pins on the high voltage transformer, but they look good, so I'm not going to touch those. I didn't touch them last time either. Okay. Make sure I bent one of these a little bit, make sure they don't short out. Now, right inside here, these are the 3 adjustment pots that I was thinking I was going to have to adjust, but since I've never touched those and the monitor works when I wiggle this connector right here, I'm not going to touch those. Now what I might do is I might check the 100 volts here and make sure I got a good 100 volts. There is a pot right here on the board here where you can adjust 100 volts. So I should be able to check that on this output. You got the ground and the out. So the red wire right there ought to be the one you check for the 100 volts. So it's supposed to have been a test point that you could check it on, but I'm not sure which one it is. Anyway, we'll come to that once we put it back in and fire it up. Okay, so now we're done with this. We can go ahead and install it back in the monitor. Then we're going to take a look at the plug and determine whether or not we're going to go ahead and change those connectors. If we went to the trouble to replace this connector here, I mean, I hate to mess with them, but I believe it would be better off if I went ahead and changed those too. So, all right, let's go ahead and set up to put this back together and go from there. Okay, maybe this time putting it back I won't accidentally sit on my mic and cut it off here. So, all right, let's go ahead and put this high voltage unit back in. Have to figure out how it lines up here. I think alright, well, maybe it'd be best to line it up with this one back here first. Looks like it right there. Okay, dropped one of the screws down here. That's the way it always happens, but there it is. Okay, bolted back in. Now we're going to have to set up again to solder that focus wire back on. All right, let's get this focus wire back on. Okay. Now, as I was saying before, but my audio didn't work, so I'm going to say it again. This focus pot right here is screwed onto the high voltage unit with these two screws right onto the metal. And there's nothing else holding this on. It's just a thin piece of plastic or some type of, it looks like plastic, but might be something like Bakelite or whatever. But if you put any pressure on this, it's going to break that off. So you always have to be careful with that, especially when you're sliding this boot on and off. You want to make sure you put opposite pressure on it so that you're not actually putting any pressure on this piece itself. Now it slid back easy. Now it's going to be a pain to slip back. There it goes. So you have to kind of cradle it and hold equal pressure so it doesn't bend or flex. Okay. Alright, we got that on. So while we still have this neck board off, let's take a look at these wires here on this connector and see if we need to replace them. Okay, well, set up. I'm going to go ahead and change these pins. I'm going to go ahead and take the old ones out, cut them off, and we're going to replace them with these .156 trifuricon pins. Like I say, it's no need to put a new header on the unit and you're going to leave the same old crappy connectors in the plug here. I got a set of crimpers. Got these from the same place I got my other set that was in my Baby Pac-Man video. I actually got this from Hobby King, which is a hobby store, and these are work well with these pins, and it's a one crimp deal. So, and I don't remember the exact price on them, but I don't think they were, but maybe between $30 and $40. I'll have to check on that. But anyway, they seem to work good, so we're going to go with them. First thing I'm going to do is I need to get these wires out of here one at a time and then replace them back in one at a time. So I'm going to remove this. Well, don't have to remove it. I'll just slide it down, the tie strap. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a little screwdriver here, and you can remove these terminals by pushing down the little tab. And they should pull right out. But this one is wanting to be stubborn. Okay, there we go. And I can always, also when these are out, I can check them to see if there were any corroded terminals. That one don't look too bad. But we're going to go ahead and replace it anyway. So let's cut it off. Strip it. And now we're going to load up a terminal. Usually the piece right here that actually clamps onto the insulation is usually spread apart a little wider than it should be. And so I can just take your pair of pliers and just squeeze them together just a little bit. It makes it a lot easier when you load them into the pliers here. So let's go ahead and we'll load it in. Okay, that's going to be a problem. The insulation is wider than that now. Okay, maybe I can't do it that way. All right, let me try it like this. Okay, we've got it in that time. Okay, let's cross our fingers. And that looks like a good crimp. Yeah, that'll work. Okay. Well, that was fun, but I got all the connectors repinned, and it should work out real good there. Once I did a few of them, I kind of got the hang of it, and it went a lot quicker. So let's go ahead and plug it on, and yeah, that feels a lot better. Okay, so what are we going to do next? Let's finish putting this back together. Let me see. Let me get my voltage probe again, and if I can figure out where I laid it. Okay, well, let's go ahead and discharge the tube again. These tubes can develop a residual charge after you discharge them, so just to be safe, I'm gonna make sure it's completely dead, and it looks like it is, because we have to put that anode cup back on. Okay, that's back on. Put the wire back in. Okay, now I'm going to go put the neck board back on. That looks okay. Okay, now we got to put the crossbar back on. It has the clamp board and the BXXYR board. And maybe I should have put this in. I think I'm going to have to, I don't know, maybe it'll go in. Let's see. Nope. I'm going to have to put that on after this. So let's see. Goes under it. All right, now I can put it on. It always bothered me that this is so close to that neck board. It's not funny. Okay. Now I need to plug this back into the deflection board. It would have been easy to plug that in first too, but okay, it's in. All right. Now we'll plug in the power. And we'll plug in the signal input. And the one that goes to the Vector Labs board that does the switching for tack scan. Okay, make sure everything's hooked up correctly. I haven't missed anything. All right, let me go ahead and set up this camera so we can see the picture on the monitor when I fire it up. Okay, well, we're all ready. So let me switch on the power and see what happens. Okay, well that's disappointing. Still have no picture. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe it just hadn't warmed up yet, because we got a picture. Okay, I'm wiggling the connector. And it's looked like it jumped a couple times. So maybe I still have something that's got a bad connection on it. Let me take a quick look at the diagram of the high voltage board. Take a look. Well, here it is the next day. I've let the monitor run for a while, and it seemed like it was pretty steady. Didn't have any problems with it, but the first time I fired it up after I put it back together, it took awfully long time for it to come up with a picture. And then as you've seen, it had a couple flickers or glitches or whatever you want to call it. And so I just something told me that no, something's still wrong here. So, you know, I continued to try to keep wiggling the connector and everything, and it seemed pretty solid. Then I decided to push in, which Let's see if I can get it to do it. A while ago it was doing it. There we go. See it, and now it's gone. And I'm just pushing in on the connector, but it's flexing the high voltage board. So there we go, goes out right there, and back on, out, on. And I know it's not that new connector I just put on. So it's got to be another component on that board that's got a bad solder joint. So we're going to have to pull it back off and closely inspect every single joint. I'm suspecting, just right off the top of my head, maybe the transformer here. Although if I tap on the transformer, nothing happens. But somewhere we got a bad connection still, and it's doing the same exact thing. And we've replaced both the header pin and the connectors in the harness here. So I'm very strong, have a very strong feeling that that's not the problem. It can't be, because we've completely eliminated the old and put in new. So there's another joint on that board. So let's see if we can't figure it out. Okay, well, I've gone over this high voltage board with a fine tooth comb, had my magnifying visor on, and had to look at it real close because it was hard to find, but I think I pretty well got two areas of concern, or two cold solder joints. And both of them are on the T900 transformer, which is a little square transformer that's in here on the board. And I've circled them so that you can easily see them here. It might be hard to see on camera, but if you look real close, you can kind of see a little ring around it. And that's a sign that it definitely has a cold solder joint. That's one of them. And if I go up here to this one, you might be able to see this one a little bit better. You can see it's got that sort of circle around the post. And that's as close as I can get it on camera. But I'm thinking that when I flex the board, sometimes it makes contact and sometimes it don't. And I believe that's what's causing it here. So let me zoom out. And as you can see, this is the board right here. I just pulled it out and I left the focus wire hooked up, so I can't move it much. But here's the transformer right here. And I tried tapping on the transformer, but the metal shield around the top of the transformer is actually soldered to the board, so the transformer itself is not moving. But when I flex the board is flexing on those terminals. So I'm going to touch those two terminals up, and I'm hoping this time it's going to cure our problem. But anytime you're working on not just the G08, but any monitor of any kind, you're going to have cold solder joints. And sometimes it's hard to find them, but anything that's suspect, you have to just go ahead and hit it, and hopefully that'll take care of it. And you got to be very careful when you do it, especially if you're going to do it to a lot of different solder points. Make sure you don't bridge any solder points over, because you'll be creating more problems than you're fixing. So let me go ahead and do that, and we'll put it back in and we'll see if we got it fixed. Okay, well, I'm not going to take a chance with just reflowing the solder on this. I'm going to go ahead and suck the solder off of it and start fresh. Okay. Go ahead and flow some new solder on them. Before I do that, I'm going to put a little flux on them just to clean the leg up on that transformer, because it doesn't look like a wire. It looks like a flat piece of metal sticking up through there like a tab. Now let's give it a try. All right, that looks good. Now we'll try this one. Okay, well, that should do it. I can't see any other what looks like bad solder joints on here, so I'm not going to bother. Everything else looks good. That's the only thing that definitely looked like it might have a problem. So go ahead and put it back together and give it a try. Well, once again, the monitor is all back together. Let's cross our fingers and power it up and see if we got it fixed. Okay. Well, that was a lot faster. That's about normal. That's about what it should be. So that's encouraging. All right, the real test is to see if we can get it to cut in and out like we were. I'm flexing the board. Rock solid. Okay, I think we got it fixed. Well, that was kind of easy, but a pain in the same way. But I'm glad it turned out to be something simple. I guess I need to get a higher power magnifier so I can see those cold solder joints a lot better. Okay, well, now that we got it all together, I'm going to put it back in the cabinet and button it back up. And so hopefully it'll be a while before I have to readdress this monitor, because like I say, last year I put a new cap kit in it and a few other parts, so it ought to be good to go for a while. Hopefully we'll just cross our fingers on that. So that's it for this video. Next video, I got one more thing I want to do with this game, and it involves one of the G08 games, which is on the multi-game here, and it's going to be something to do with Zektor. So look forward to that video. Until then, we'll see you.